Welcome back to the Music House. Today we're going to be learning a cup routine to the march El Capitan by John Philip Sousa. But there's a few things we need to do first, like who is John Philip Sousa, and what is El Capitan, and what's a march. So let's talk about those things before we begin. John Philip Sousa was an American composer, and he is best known as the March King. That's because he wrote a lot of marches. Now, marches are often patriotic songs that are written for a specific country. So in this case, America, because he was from Washington, D.C. He lived from 1854 to 1932. John Philip Sousa joined the Marine Band when he was just 13 years old. That's because his father had an inn for him and he was an apprentice. Then he joined the band officially and stayed until he was about 20 years old. After that, he returned later in life to be the conductor of the Marine Band, which is known as the President's Own. They're the group that always plays for the president whenever they're going somewhere or having a big event or inaugurations. One of the things that's really interesting about Sousa is that he also wanted to create a marching tuba. The tuba is a really big instrument and it's not very easy to hold and march in the marching band. So John Philip Sousa got together with a friend of his, J.W. Pepper, and together they created what's known as the sousaphone. And the sousaphone, if you've seen your brothers or sisters marching in marching band, is a really big tuba that sits on your shoulders and you can carry around with you. That gives the nice boom, 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 boom bass sound in the marching band. Now let's find out about El Capitan. What does El Capitan mean? Well, in Spanish it means the captain. And Sousa wrote an operetta, which is a little opera, and it was a comic opera. So this little comic opera is about the captain. And he's a Peruvian captain who is very kind of silly and ridiculous. But while we're talking about El Capitan, let's talk about rocks. Wait a minute, rocks? I know it seems silly, but stick with me here for a second. Even though rocks don't really have anything to do with John Philip Sousa, there is this really large rock formation in Yosemite National Park that's in California named El Capitan. This rock formation is 7,500 feet high. It's really big. And there's a 3,000 foot vertical incline of just granite rock. So that vertical is straight up and down. That's straight up 3,000 feet. That's really, really far. El Capitan has become a kind of destination for serious rock climbers. And you know, Miss Faust being a serious rock climber, I had to go check it out. Okay, maybe I'm not a serious rock climber, but if I were, this would definitely be on my list of go-to places to rock climb. Okay, now back to the march. March is a specific form. Now, remember, form is the structure of our music. So typically we talk about form in terms of letters. So like A-B form, or A-B-A form, or A-B-A-C-A-B-A form. That's a rondo. But today we're going to give some different names to the form because march form is slightly different. So in march form we have an introduction. And we know the introduction is like that introductory paragraph you write when you're writing a paper. It introduces the piece of music. And then instead of the A section, we have the first strain. And the first strain is always repeated. And then we have the second strain. And the second strain is always repeated. Then we have not the third strain. No, we have to mix it up a little bit. And we call it the trio. Now trio means three, so it makes sense even though it's not called the third strain. And the trio is always repeated. Then we have the episode, and the episode is like an interlude. And it's just kind of a bridge that takes us from the trio to the last section. And the episode is not repeated. And then we have the last strain. And the last strain is always repeated. Now, sometimes composers like to add a little stinger note onto the very end of the piece. It's accented, it's usually loud, and boom, it's the end. And we call that the stinger. And El Capitan does have a stinger in it. Now that we know a little bit about John Philip Sousa, El Capitan, rocks, and march form, let's learn the cup routine to John Philip Sousa's El Capitan.